What's up, everybody? Brandon R. Scarborough here. I want to take a moment to share with you and tell you about my dream, my passion, ultimately my purpose. Dreams Academy is our nonprofit organization located in Akron, Ohio, where we specialize in mentoring young men of color. I started Dreams Academy in 2016, and since then, we've had the opportunity to impact and mentor over 300 young men in our area. I want to tell you about this because it's dear to me, it's near to me, and so I want to tell you how you can support. Go to our website and see what we're doing, www.dreamsacademyonline.org. Also, when you get to our website, be sure to visit our Queens Academy page. We launched Queens Academy so that we can start having the same impact with young women of color in the summer of 2021. It's been a great journey, and we look forward to impacting more and more young people. We need your help. Consider today making a donation to Dreams Academy so that we can keep impacting more and more young people. You can give online right at our website. You can give through Cash App, Dreams Academy. You can also text to give by texting DREAMS to 44321. If you are unable to donate now, that's completely fine. We still want to connect with you. Visit us on Instagram at Dreams Academy USA and Queens Academy USA. You can join us on Facebook at Dreams Academy and Queens Academy, or go to our website and fill out the Contact Us form and leave us your email address so we can add you to our email list so that you will get our newsletter so you can stay up to date with everything that's happening with our organization. Whatever you decide to do, however you connect with us, we're grateful for the connection. Thank you so much in advance for your support. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dear White Teacher. I'm your host, Brandon R. Scarborough. I hope that you've been able to dive into our past episodes. We're excited about 2023 and our guests. And so we diving right in today. I got a great friend of mine, great brother, a great connector in the Akron community by the name of Kemp Boyd. He works in and out of the schools. Matter of fact, I'm not going to get into all what he does because I'm going to let him tell you about what it is that he does and who he is. Man, welcome to the show, man.
Man, brother, thank you, man.
Yes,
but look, you showing me up with the jacket. I see you.
Man, whatever, man.
I see you, man.
See what he just did there? He beat me to the punch because he knew I was going to get on him because he's going to wear a jogging suit. I wanted to wear one, too. I said, Kemp going to come in here with his cigar jacket on and whatnot. And then he come in here, he just got out of practice and stuff. I said, man, I could have put my jogging suit on, man.
Hey, brother, first of all, man, thanks for having me, man. I've always been a fan of your podcast and just of you as a person, man, as a man and what you pour into the community.
Appreciate it.
So thank you, man. I'm honored to be here, man. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What I always like to tell people, man, even before I get into, the stuff that we do, man, I try to let people know first my being, man. I'm married, man. Be married for 18 years. Come April 30th.
Cool.
To I think, man, just my absolute soulmate and Stacy. We've been blessed, man. We have 6 beautiful children, and so that's kind of my being. Father, husband, father, man of faith, and what I get to do from that is I get to navigate some of these platforms. One being Love Akron, where I am the executive director. Another is I'm the head football coach over at Akron Garfield Golden Rams, so go Rams, and also get to
1040.
Oh man, come on now.
It comes out every show, man. It comes out every show.
And then also, man, I co-pastor over at Garden City Church, man, with my friend, my brother Brian Kunkler. So, yeah, man, it's really cool, man, that I'm in a lot of different spaces and places, and so really feel very fortunate, man, and humbled that I get to do that.
Yeah, that's cool. With the talk about just a piece of what Love Akron does, man. Because you all do a lot of relevant work connecting different cultures, communities, and man, really having a lot of necessary conversations and things like that and dialogue to really pull the community together. So talk about that a bit.
Yeah, man, we feel like, one of our responsibilities is to be this really great connector and convener that leads to collaboration with change makers in order for us to make a collective impact, right? All of us can have, if you will, a rock, right? And we can all be throwing that rock, but if we all have a focus or concentrated area and where we throw that rock at, then what winds up happening is we end up building a dam, right? Which leaves a lot of things sifting through the cracks. And so we think it's important to bring people together to have connection and to have dialogue. Not that we're looking for agreement, not by any stretch of imagination, but we say, hey, what could happen if we can bring people together to really gain understanding of one another, with each other? Because we feel like that's important. We often talk about that. We believe relationships are the greatest intervention, right? If we can just be more relational with one another, that's going to get us a lot further than what we believe we can do apart.
Yeah.
And so it's all for us is about being together. And you know, we're doing some things, man, as far as on the mental health side, where we do some mental health first aid training. We do our grief recovery stuff. This Saturday, February 25th, we're doing our Love Akron One City, where we're doing our second installment of Seeking Understanding, where we're talking about the unspoken history of the church. And so I think today we got over 200 people registered.
Wow.
It's going to be downtown Akron Library. And so those type of environments, man, is what's really fun to do.
Yeah.
Right? And probably similar to you, Brandon, you really didn't, like I always knew growing up I wanted to help people, but I never thought I was going to be a nonprofit. I never thought I would have this type of platform to where people are actually looking for this type of element and saying, yeah, I just want to get together for the sake of getting together and not being so tactical, but being more communal.
Okay. Yeah, no, so that's the difference. I ain't know till I was good and grown.
Yeah.
But you are operating in a very similar lane to my father, who I talk about a lot, man. That's like my hero, man. And he did a lot of that work in the Alliance community, Alliance, Ohio. So, man, I never realized until I was late 30s that I was just like him.
Yeah.
And then that's where I jumped into all this work. But anyway, man, you mentioned relationships, man, and a quick story that you may not realize where you had an impact on me is that, you know, we see each other at the track sometime.
Yeah.
And man, you know, I was out there, I go out there and walk in the mornings and, you know, we just walk, what's up, man? And then he was like, hey, I like your podcast, man. Keep that up.
Yeah.
And man, you don't even have an idea how that blessed me, man, because I never know who's listening, you know, who is helping, who is impacting. And man, so to hear that, let me know I was going in the right direction a bit. So man, I appreciate that and thank
Absolutely,
you.
Brother.
That's what you do anyway, man.
Yeah,
You encourage the whole city, man.
Thank you, man.
So you know, so obviously you listen to it if you're telling me to keep doing it.
Yes.
But you know, Dear White Teacher, man, it's this platform where we are talking about the relationships, basically, because this is where we always find the foundation at between teachers and their students, especially those of different cultures, mainly white teachers and their black students. And so, man, expound on some of your time and work, you know, over time, your history in the schools and coaching, and you just mentioned hall monitoring, and man, just you're in there. You may not be in the classroom, but you're in there.
Yeah.
You know, so talk about, you know, how that started, how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. Man, honestly, man, it started for me in very humble beginnings. I was a hall monitor, man. I want to say it was back in early 2000s at Camp McKinley High School. And I did it for about 2 years. And the interesting thing, a pastor I had at that time, Pastor Eula Greer, shout out to her. She said, Brother Kemp, man, you dress where you're going. And so every day I went in there, shirt and tie.
Yeah.
Even to the point where when people came in, they thought I was a principal. And I'm like, no, man, I'm just a hall monitor. But the one thing that it taught me is that, you know, starting at these humble beginnings. But then also there were young men who looked like me that were watching me.
Yes.
They were watching how I was moving, how I was navigating different things. And then obviously I started coaching there. And so the one thing I think that I've always experienced and appreciated, and it's kind of came to light back in 2020, there was a national statistic that says 75% of white people don't have a meaningful relationship with a person of color.
Wow.
And when you think about that, man, that's a really huge stat, especially when you look at the educational environment and most teachers are white. And when you look at the urban setting in urban school districts, most of your, you know, students are going to be African American. And so now it's kind of this juxtaposition of, man, they're really both, if you will, cultures are forced into this classroom together of trying to understand. And so the one thing that I try to help, I think, white brothers and sisters with is, you know, don't try to come in like you don't have a bias when you do, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you're racist, but it means that you do have a bias. So you are going to possibly treat someone a certain way before you really get to know them. And so, but ones that I feel like have been most effective, white teachers that have been most effective, are the ones that are saying they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And there's a willingness there to learn and to understand, while at the same time not overstepping. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to get in and now all of a sudden you down and you talk the language and the lingo. Like, because, you know, kids see through that, man. And they know when you being fake and you being phony. You're better off, man, just being straight up who you are. And really now, and it's a lot different, Brand, from when we was in school, right? Like, we were under the thing where we knew to have respect for our teachers.
Yeah.
It was just understood.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't, we was going to deal when we got home. But
Absolutely.
now,
It's a different breed of kid.
it's a different breed of kid to where now they're wanting respect.
Yep.
And if you don't respect them, it's like, well, man, why should I respect you? Which is really different. And the humility that teachers have to have, not to say, well, hey, man, just because I'm the teacher and I'm the authoritative figure, man, then what I say is law. Because now, man, a kid will leave.
Yes.
Because they don't see, there's no dignity in that for them. You know what I mean? And so the teachers that I've noticed that do that well, not only do they gain respect of their classroom, but they gain respect of those students. So much so that student now begins to be your advocate to the rest of their little crew. If you know what I'm saying? But if you don't, you just become another teacher, man, and that there's always going to be that friction.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I've always told our players and players I've coached in the past, you know, I know it's hard, but I need you to be resilient because you ain't gonna win that argument.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna win that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I said, and I'm not saying that those teachers are right, but what I am saying is that sometimes teachers have learned, like we know just from a government, they know how to play the system.
Yeah.
And so the system, in a sense, is not really set up for you to succeed.
At all.
You know what I mean? But our kids don't understand it, so we have to tell them and teach them that, right? And I had an experience, man, I'm gonna be honest with you, brother, back when I was in high school. I'm originally from Tennessee, born and raised, born in the projects. You've heard me say this before, born in the projects, but I grew up in the suburbs till I was 12. Then we moved to the inner city in Waycross, Georgia. From there, I came up to Ohio, and I graduated from a rural area called Willard, Ohio. Went there my junior year. And I had a teacher at that time. Her name's Mrs. Sands. White teacher, man, taught honors English. She had a blonde bob, glasses, just a typical English teacher. You know what I'm saying? Like, witty, no muscle fuss. And I remember one day I was the only black in my graduating class of '88, the only one. There was 4 blacks in the entire school.
Right.
And I remember I was in class and, you know, man, just, you know, doing my best because I have moved, I was new there and I was different, right? Because I'm coming from the city. I'm coming from an urban area, right? I got my cross colors on, my rayon shirt, like I'm in it, you know what I mean? But I remember she pulled me out in the hallway one day and she said, hey, you know, Mr. Boyd, I want to tell you something, man. Your classmates, they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. You know, here I am trying to be this class clown, right? And I tell that story to people to this day because I said, she was one of the first people who didn't look the way I looked, man, that actually spoke into me and spoke truth.
Yes.
You know what I mean? She spoke truth into me in a way that didn't offend me.
Yeah.
But it was like, no, man, I want to ally with you. And I remember I ended up getting like a B+ in her class, but I've never forgotten that because she took the time to let me know what was going on around me when I was too ignorant to realize what was happening. Because I was thinking, man, I'm just being a class clown.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm just trying to, quote unquote, fit in, I guess, right? And so I don't think those type of relationships, to build that, man, takes time. And I think sometimes our teachers, they're so busy with these standardized tests and all these other things. We've lost that element of, okay, man, let's not worry so much about the test. Let's not worry about trying to get through something. But let me really dig into who you are. Instead of removing you from the class because you was late or because you're tardy and closing the door, let me understand why you were.
Yes.
Let me take that time, right? And so, and when I talk to people about that, what I tell them is, this is not about us getting agreements. It's about us getting understanding.
Yes.
Because maybe that person was late for a legitimate reason, right? It's a lot to get through, and you're bumping into people, and of course you're trying to say hi and bye and all those type of things. But those are the things I think that when I see some teachers that are doing it really well, it's because they're making that time.
Yeah.
But they're also not coming in with this white savior mentality, right? Because we all know that's a slippery slope too.
Yes.
Like you ain't gonna save every kid.
Right.
And every kid honestly don't necessarily want to be saved, at least not by you.
Right.
So don't put yourself out there like that to get emotionally attached to where you do get hurt or you do get played. Because I say all the time, man, these kids know the hustle.
Yeah.
And they gonna see you coming a mile
They
away.
learn it at a young age.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
use it.
Yes.
Yeah, they use it.
And they manipulate.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, you said so much, man. I don't even know really where I want to go yet. So I'm just go this way, man. Man, so the reason this conversation happened is because I came to an event. So I want you to talk about the nature of the event because I don't know the backstory of how that went down or came to be. But it was an event out in an area that's probably, if not 100%, very close to.
No doubt about it.
Okay, 100% Caucasian community. But they invited you in to speak towards, you can explain all that, but I was there, and so I want to hear the backstory as well, how that event came to be, and what the purpose of that was, and how that even ties into what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Derry Weimer is an individual that is a part of our Jedi Experience 2 cohort.
Shout out to Derry, because I'll tell that story later, but shout out to Derry,
shout out
man.
for sure.
Yes,
for
sir.
Sure. And so he's a part of our Jedi 2 cohort, and he heard me speak somewhere, and I remember he ended up giving me a call. I want to say it was like December of last year, maybe even November. He says, "Hey man, listen, our church like has these, we have people to come in and talk to our church, like, once a month." And he said, "Would you be interested in coming?" I said, "Hey, yeah, man, absolutely, no problem." And, even he was kind of like, "Hey man, I just want to let you know, man, I would love for you to come and share, about your experience being a black man, right? As a husband, as a father, you're leading a city movement in Love Akron, as a coach, pastor, all that stuff, right?" Because he had heard me, I don't know where he heard me from, but he heard me somewhere. I was speaking on something, heard me talking. He's like, "Man," he said, "I just thought that was really interesting, your approach." And he said, "Man, I would love for you to come and do that with our church."
Yeah.
And so as time went on, me and him talked, and we just talked about layout, what that can look like. But then he's like, "Kemp, man, we got like over 100 people registered." And I was like, "Oh man, all right." But as you know, man, like when you walk in that space, we're in Hudson.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the oldest church in Hudson.
Okay.
Like the Civil War, those pews that we sit in was from the Civil War.
Wow.
Like it's been that old,
Okay.
right? But it was beautiful. Like you walk in, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so, anytime I've gone into those spaces, man, obviously, man, I'm going to pray because first of all, I want to make sure that I honor those that come before me, that I honor you, that I honor us as a people, because we are much more communal,
Yes.
right? We think much more from a collective perspective, whereas I think our white brothers and sisters, they think more individualized. They individualize everything. And, we just kind of delve into this dialogue about race and what it looks like and some of the things that we were doing, and it was very well received. But what I didn't realize though, Brandon, man, we ended up meeting towards the beginning of February. And when I met with Steve, who's the pastor there, Derry came back and one of their elders, they had been telling me that, man, they've been doing this work for a long time within themselves, trying to educate themselves through reading and books. And they said, we've just never maybe have done it well with inviting like black people into our space, African Americans in our space. Now,
Yes.
I think sometimes what happens is like they go and they do a lot of great work missionally within the city of Akron. But my point to them was, have you ever invited them up here? Because you all need the experience of what it looks like to host and to be hospitable to people that are coming in that don't look like you.
Yes.
That's going to have a different rhythm of how they do praise and worship than you. And are you open to that? What does that look like? And again, the discussion was really well received and well taken, so much so that they kind of want to have back to kind of do a part 2. What does that look like? But for me, I want to know, man, what did you all think and what did you take from the discussion and the conversation, right? Just simply because there's got to be an openness and a willingness. And this is one thing I love about what you're doing with this podcast, man. I don't sense that you're trying to throw shade or guilt or shame.
At all.
Right? But it's like, no, man, we got to have this discussion and conversation. And even the title of, hey, Dear White Teacher is like, hey, listen, you're in this urban area. And so you have to understand that in these urban areas there's going to come a lot of these things that we're seeing and that we're experiencing.
Yes.
Whether it's the violence, whether it's the addiction to drugs, whether now as we talk about mental health and some of the suicides and, you know, we got young moms walking around here. Like these are real things.
Yes.
And it's not one to cast or put judgment on, but sometimes, man, this is the environment our kids are walking in, right? And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I'm saying that's the environment.
Yeah.
And so even me as a black man, I'm coming into these environments and some of that stuff I can't relate to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, man, I had my first child when I was 29. You know what I mean? And so just because, and I tell this to white teachers, just because I'm black don't mean I can relate to everything white.
Yeah.
But there's some things that you can even relate to based on your own story. But are you willing to be vulnerable enough to share your story with these students? So that way now you can kind of build a bridge, if you will, versus, you know, we kind of create these barriers versus bridges. And so the nature of that conversation out there in Hudson was just that. It was like, how do we now begin to build bridges of understanding with one another to where now we get out of this term of thinking that having these conversations about race are uncomfortable, right? They're gonna continue to be uncomfortable until we start making them normal. Because once we make it normal, then they become what? They become essential. Now it's essential that we have this conversation. You doing this podcast, Brandon, is essential that we have this conversation because, man, this can be a help not only for the white teacher, but it can also be a help for the African-American student, right, and their families. And so we got to get out of the uncomfortable stage of talking about race and what it looks like to say, hey, if we can make this normal, then now it becomes essential for all of us. And that's the same thing when it comes to mental health and all this stuff.
Right.
Like, we don't feel comfortable talking these things, so we don't talk about it. Like, it's just, I say this all the time. I said, we've probably, in the black community growing up, we probably had more mental health trauma than what we know, but it was just Uncle Earl in the back. Well, just take him his plate, close the door, leave him in his room. Well, Uncle Earl was probably bipolar, but we never got him diagnosed.
Because going to talk to somebody meant you was crazy.
Absolutely, it meant you was crazy. It means you didn't pray enough. You go to church, you pray. And so it's all these things that are caught up with stigma. And so I'm just really, again, I said it before, I'm honored to be a part of this, man, but I'm really proud of what you're doing to step in the gates, to say, no, it's essential that we talk about this, not from a standpoint of guilt and shame or rejection, but from a standpoint of understanding.
So the guilt and shame piece fits in the conversation. I'm definitely not trying to do that to any teacher, right? And at the same time, I caught criticism for doing this, and it was seen as me apologizing for the challenges within our community. And I had to, tell the young man, like, first of all, I need you to listen to the entire, he came from a clip. This generation, sound bites, took it out of context. I said, man, dive into the whole piece, because I absolutely do this for the success of both the teacher and the student.
Absolutely.
And if I can help the teacher can then help the student, and everybody's successful, right? And so the event, man, reason I spoke up Mr. Derry, Mr. Weimer, is that how you say it, Weimer? Yeah, Weimer. And so, man, so just context for the listeners, I walk in the event, sit down. At some point, you shouted me out, Brandon in the back, yada, yada, yada. Man, a couple minutes later, you all are talking about whatever you talk about, and Mr. Weimer says, is that Dear White Teacher Brandon? Yeah. And I'm like, how you know who I am? You know what I mean? Absolutely. And he like, everybody in here, write down the name of this podcast. I listen to every episode. You got to listen to it. And man, you may not, I'm a crybaby, man. Yeah. So
Me too.
I start crying in a heartbeat. I'm like, man, that just, I was so grateful for that, man. So shout out to Mr. Weimer. So
Absolutely.
we got his name on the show,
That's
man. So
right.
I'm
Come
gonna have to
on,
get
man.
him on
Yes,
here
sir.
now.
Yes, sir.
But man,
Absolutely.
that blessed me incredibly, man. But that event, man, you brought up this concept called cultural humility.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to dive into, man. What does that look like? What does it mean? In relationship to education, what does that look like, man? Just dive into that, man, because that's what I took away from that evening, man.
Yeah.
You kind of expounded on that.
Absolutely. So I was introduced to cultural humility, man, I would say probably a couple of years ago from a good friend of mine, Karen Herlicker. Shout out
I
to
know
Karen.
Karen. That's my buddy.
Man. So, she introduced me to it.
Okay.
And so I got to meet the actual author. He wrote a book.
Okay.
Brother up
Real
there.
quick.
Yes.
Karen didn't know, but she tried to hook me up with my cousin. So we had to tell her, nah, man, that's my cousin, man. I said, do you know Brandon? She said, yeah, that's my cousin.
Yeah.
Karen, hey, Karen, that's my buddy.
Oh, man, Karen is awesome, man. And
Yeah.
so the author of the book is Dr. James Knight, man.
Okay.
He is the vice president of DEI up at, I want to say it's St. Ignatius High School.
Okay.
And so he wrote this great book, man. It's called Cultural Humility, man. Really thin, easy read, but it's like a workbook as well. And so we adopted this into our Jedi experience curriculum. Like everybody that comes through it, man, we take you through the 8-week process of the book. And I had an opportunity to meet him and talk to him about some things, but also I wanted to be supportive, as I am to you, with what he was doing, man, because I thought it was so profound. And so a part of the book, I think it's in either the first or the second chapter, he talks about this, and it blew my mind because this is what we've always heard, right? Like, oh man, we need to have cultural competency training, everybody. But what he said was, he says, we should never think that we're going to master another person's culture.
Right.
Even that thinking is wrong, right? Even that thinking is, high and mighty. But he says what we have to have for one another is cultural humility, meaning we have to have a willingness to be able to learn from each other about culture, to really lean into it. And that was something that we have just done, and I've made a part of my own personal life. And just want to thank Dr. Knight for that, for first of all writing that book, but having the courage to do it, because it does take that. And again, from the same point you come from, not doing it to guilt or shame anybody, but saying that, hey man, this needs to be our posture. To walk humbly with one another is really, I think, what God causes us all to do. He just simply took some of those biblical principles and put them in a book without making it religious, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, but cultural humility, man, has been a practice that I think that ever since I read the book and went through it with our first Jedi cohort, and now that it's become a part of our curriculum when we take people through, it's just so important. Because that's how I think we have to be able to learn from one another. And I think when everything happened back into 2020 with COVID and George Floyd murder, there was this heightened sense of people wanting, people say woke, whatever. But what I see it is there was a heightened sense of people wanting to gain more understanding.
Yeah.
Right, in this, that they started to display, whether they realize it or not, this cultural humility of wanting to know, wanting to understand. And there's some black people that say, hey, it's not my job to teach white people, right? And I respect that. And I also say, well, if we don't, then who will?
Yeah.
If we don't, who will?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because after a while, they're going to get fed up and they ain't going to want to learn nothing. So they're going to go back to whatever ways that brought them there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so platforms like these are created as almost, I feel like, workshops or teaching tools for them to go back and watch and to look at. And you mentioned Derry, man. Derry would be great for this show because Derry used to be a principal.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He used to be a principal. I even think a superintendent because he led SCI years ago.
Right.
And what I found with him is there is not only a level of understanding, but a wanting to dig deeper into some of these challenges.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Of how we kind of bring things along.
You hear that, Derry? So expect a call.
Yeah, man, do it.
Here in the near future.
Absolutely.
Here in the near future. To your point about you said something, because the young man that I was having this conversation with, that's what he said. He said, it's not my job to teach them. he said they and he was speaking towards white teachers, they need to go find the information themselves. And I just said, man, that can't be right. Just even in talking to teachers, man, and you know this from being in the school day, you mentioned standardized testing, you mentioned just all the things that come. The bell rings at 8 o'clock. Why is he late? You know, where do they even have the time?
Yeah.
You know, so you do have teachers that have that humility and they want to learn, but I'm nonstop, 8 to 3:30. And I've had things in that day happen that I may not understand, but I can't stop what I'm doing to go figure out how to understand it.
Absolutely.
So I gotta have a platform like this to bring that understanding and even create a safe community to ask those questions, to do what you did in Hudson. That was a safe space.
Yep.
And even in that, I heard those that got the comment say things like, I want to understand what I just don't understand or what I just don't know. And so I even saw and heard the hunger in that to learn more and to do more with that, man. So that was a great event. So man, that all ties into to your work in and out the classroom, on the football field, on Love Akron. You pastor a multicultural church, correct?
Yeah. We call ourselves a multi-church because that's what we feel like God has given us to be.
Yeah.
And we feel like whether you're Democrat, Republican, young or old, Gen Z, Gen X, Millennium, Baby Boomer, white, black, whatever, you know, we're all bonded through the love of Jesus.
Yes.
And so when that enters in, all those other things that we have, I guess, made that divide us in the world, we believe that Jesus brings us together.
Okay.
And that's the beautiful thing about it. And so my co-pastor, Brian Kunkler, man, he felt like God gave him this vision, man, and I'm glad to partner with him to manifest that. And it doesn't mean that, you know, we're 50-50 down the road, because we ain't,
right.
You know what I'm saying? But we are, I think, steadily working and striving towards that by faith to continue to do that. And here's one thing I would say too about teachers, like when you look just even across Akron Public Schools, most of your coaches in Akron Public Schools are African American.
Yes.
Right. And so they are teachers. You know, their teaching classroom is either an outdoor classroom or an indoor court, but they're teachers.
Yeah.
And so my encouragement, my advice is, as a coach, start partnering with some of these teachers. Start knowing who they are, know what their names are, and present yourself in a way as an ally to them. Right? Like, I want to be an ally to my teachers and not simply just an advocate for my players. Because sometimes they're gonna like, oh, well, you just want them to play. No, man, I want them to learn. I want them to grow. If we don't never win a game, I hope that I'm teaching them how to be leaders in this space.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, I'm gonna need your feedback. I'm gonna need your instruction. I'm gonna need, hey, whether they're not doing well, you know, how are they not doing it? So I need this communication. And something that we did last week, man, this was beautiful, man. And I'd show you some pictures. We had, first time ever, we had what we called a father-son goal setting session.
Okay.
And we invited the fathers of our players in. And we said, hey, man, if father can't make it, if you got an older brother, if you got an uncle, cousin, whomever.
Yeah.
But we wanted to be a male. Nothing against moms or sisters, nothing like that. But it was important because our players, they had already written down their goals early in the week.
Okay.
Having the fathers or the older mentor there, the male mentor there, was, the next column was, it said, steps in order to accomplish my goal are what? Well, they don't know. So we got to go get some that's already been there, done it, to bring them in. Then after that, we had food and we broke bread and it was a beautiful setup. But after that, we had what we called our off-season draft, where we drafted our team, broke them down in different groups. But we have a point. We have an off-season point program. Now, I introduced this to our faculty and staff a couple of months ago. And I told them, I said, hey, here's where we're going to need your help. Because they get more points based on their academics and based on teacher feedback.
Okay.
Hey, if they're doing good, man, you get 5 points. If they're not doing good, you get points deducted. So you're always either gaining points or you're losing points. Whatever, right? But then this goes back to how we partner with teachers.
Yeah.
Right? And using and having the teacher and presenting it more from an ally perspective, to where beginning of every year, I always send the teachers the roster of all of our football players. And I send them a letter. Hey, listen, if you have any challenge, trouble, hey, let me know. I'll come. Brother, I done sat in classrooms to observe.
Yeah.
Because Miss B, shout out to Miss B over at Garfield High School, she texts me. She's like, hey, coach, such and such is either doing this really well. Hey, you got a second, man, I'll leave where I'm going. I'll go in the classroom, right? Just because I want to build that trust, and I need my players to see that, hey, man, we're working together, not for your detriment, but for your benefit. And those, I think, teachers that can accept that way, Brandon, they have more success, because now look at the coaches as an ally, right? Don't just look at us as, oh, man, we're just advocating for our student athletes only because we just want them to play.
Yeah.
It ain't that, right? But we understand the importance of them being able to play, but also them being a student athlete in that order.
Yeah.
But in order for that to happen, we don't want nobody else turned to the streets.
Yeah.
So we got to work together, right? Because I don't want to lose a kid. You don't want to lose a kid. And we all want these kids to be successful. So the more that we can kind of build that bridge of partnership for those young men and young women, I believe they see that.
Yeah.
And they acknowledge that, and now they know they can't get over.
Right.
Right? Because I know Coach Boyd.
Yeah.
Not only Coach Boyd, but I know Coach Bradford.
It's a higher level of accountability.
Absolutely, right? And so now, and it's not a thing where, oh, I'm trying to get you in trouble. But hey, they understand now what we're doing in our program, as sent from our father-son goal-setting session to our draft to our offset. So now they know. And so now it's more of a collaborative approach. It's more of a collective.
Yeah.
Versus football's over here, classroom's over here, and never none to me. No, man. All these things got to work together.
Yeah.
Right? We got to be winning in the classroom, because we tell our players all the time, man, there's 2 roads to a championship, period, point blank. Classroom first, and the weight room. If we can do those 2 things really, really well, we put ourselves on path for a championship.
Wow. So, man, another aspect of this podcast is to present strategies like that. So let's not just have conversations about what's going right, what's going wrong, who right or wrong, but how can we foster those relationships creatively.
Yeah.
Man, I ain't never heard nothing like that.
Yeah.
So the goal, I hope, is a teacher hears this and can go to their coach and say, hey, listen to this.
Absolutely.
This is something we can try in our school, and let's be allies together to help these kids, man. We usually end by giving a word of wisdom, man, but you just gave a whole template on how to bring the football team and the kids together, man. But no, that's awesome information, man. But yeah, we always end, man, whatever's on your heart, man. That's your camera right there. Take a moment with whatever piece of advice or wisdom that you have, and then tell the people, if you want to be found, where they can find it. Some people, like my last guest, she had no social media whatsoever. So she like, So we just skipped over that. But man, tell the people where they can find you. Because look, you operate in 10 different spaces, man. So I don't know how you going.
Oh, man, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I think the biggest thing when I think about where we're at right now as a society, as a community, is that I think all of us, young, old, everything in between, we're all dealing with trauma. And trauma is a real thing. The thing that we may not know about one another is when somebody's in a traumatic state, the first thing that goes is their ability to listen. So again, if you're a teacher out there, if you're a parent out there, if you're a pastor, if you're a coach, a mentor, principal, anybody, when we're dealing with each other, understand if somebody's not listening, it might not always be a thing where they're looking to be disrespectful towards you, but maybe there's some trauma that's going on there that we have to be patient, right? We have to responsibly listen to one another in order to learn from one another so that we can lead collectively together. So I just kind of want to leave that in, because I think right now, as far as our mental health that's going on in our city, but also in our county and beyond, is a very, very important thing. And if we don't take the time to really listen to understand each other, guess what's going to continue to happen is our suicide rate's going to go up. And right now, suicides, I think, are the second leading cause of young people right now. And so you may be one of the most important protective factors for young people is a very healthy relationship with an adult. And you might just be that adult. So don't take that for granted. Let's ally up, let's advocate, and let's also partner with one another to build a stronger ecosystem relationally, so that we can help our young people get to exactly where it is they want to go. Because they don't want to go to prison, they don't want to go to jail, and they don't want to go to the grave. But for some of them, they see that as the only option because, man, there's a sense of helplessness and hopelessness. But you can give them hope. And you can find me, man. I'm on LinkedIn. I got an Instagram. It's Coach Kemp. Love Akron with www.loveakron.org is our website. And so, yeah, just reach out. Please reach out to us. We believe in what we're doing. And I know it's probably a pun and cliche, but man, I love Akron. Not because at first when I got here I did, but it's because my wife, my children, and these young people, young men that I coach, they've helped me to love Akron more. And so please get in touch with me, man. Let's keep loving Akron together.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you coming.
Man, appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir.
Bro.
Yes, sir. Another episode in the books. Stay tuned. We got a lot of great things happening with this platform, so be on the lookout for that. Please share, download, like. We're on YouTube. Check out the TikTok and the Instagram, dear_white_teacher, and just keep following, help us keep growing, and we gonna keep coming back doing what we do, having meaningful conversations to make everybody successful. I'm your host, Brandon R. Scarborough. See you next time. Peace.